On the morning of my 68th birthday, I sat alone in my kitchen slicing a single apple into quarters because that was all I had, and tried not to cry. Not from self-pity, not from loneliness, but from the bone-deep exhaustion of pretending I was fine when I was drowning. The rent was late again. My blood pressure pills sat on the counter, cut into pathetic halves because I couldn't afford to refill the prescription. Last night, I'd eaten crackers and water for dinner. Again. The church pantry had been empty when I'd gone on Tuesday, and I was too ashamed to ask twice in 1 week. This was my birthday. 68 years of life, and I was rationing apple slices like they were gold. Then I heard his car pull up outside. My son, my baby, my Alex. My heart lurched with a painful mixture of joy and shame. I didn't want him to see me like this, thin, worn down, living in a house that smelled like old fabric and desperation. But God, I'd missed him. I wiped my eyes quickly, smoothed my faded dress, and tried to paste on the smile of a mother who had everything under control. He walked through my door like sunlight breaking through storm clouds, tall, handsome, successful, carrying white roses that must have cost $50. $50! I could have eaten for 2 weeks on $50. "Happy birthday, Mom," he said, and his smile was so warm, so proud, so full of love that it broke something inside me. I hugged him tight, breathing in his expensive cologne, feeling the fine fabric of his suit against my cheek, and for one perfect moment, I let myself feel safe, protected, loved by the boy I'd sacrificed everything to raise. Then he pulled back, looked into my eyes with such tenderness, and asked the question that didn't just shatter my world, it revealed that my world had already been shattered and I'd been too blind to see it. "Mom, do you still like the $7,000 Kayla gives you every month? I just want to make sure you're comfortable." Time stopped. My heart stopped. The air in the room turned to concrete in my lungs. $7,000 every month? The room began to spin. My legs went weak. I gripped the edge of the kitchen table to keep from collapsing because the words didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. They were impossible. For 11 months, I'd been starving. Literally, starving. Choosing between keeping the lights on or buying a loaf of bread. Washing my only decent dress in the sink because I couldn't afford the laundromat. Walking 3 miles to church instead of taking the bus to save $2. I hadn't received a single penny. Not $1, not 1 cent. My baby, my son, thought I'd been living comfortably while I'd been dying slowly of poverty and shame. My mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. Finally, I whispered, my voice barely steady. "Son, the church has been helping me get by." Alex's smile vanished. His eyes searched mine, confused, almost frightened. "What do you mean? Kayla brings it to you every month. I transfer it to her account myself." Before I could answer, she appeared. Kayla glided into my small living room like she owned it, diamonds glinting at her ears, designer heels clicking against my old wooden floor, wrapped in a cloud of perfume so expensive it made my homemade cornbread smell like poverty. Her dress probably cost more than my monthly church donations for an entire year. She smiled at me, bright, dazzling, cold as winter stone. "Oh, Maureen," she said sweetly, tilting her head with false concern. "You must have forgotten, sweetheart. I come by every month, remember?" Her eyes flicked to Alex. "You know how it is with older folks. Memory isn't what it used to be." I looked at her calmly. my heart pounding but my face still. "If you brought it," I said quietly, "then it must have gotten lost somewhere." The air in the room turned heavy. Alex looked between us, his mother in a faded apron, his wife in silk and jewels. Confusion clouded his face. Kayla, you've been bringing the money, right? Every month?" "Of course, darling," she purred, resting a possessive hand on his arm. "Every single month. Mother just forgets sometimes. It's natural at her age." I said nothing. Some wars aren't won with words. They're won with patience, evidence, and the quiet strength of a mother who knows the truth. After they left, I sat alone at my kitchen table as the afternoon sun painted long shadows across the floor. The white roses Alex brought sat in a chipped vase, their beauty mocking the ugliness I'd just witnessed. $7,000 every month for 11 months. I did the math slowly, carefully, the way I'd learned to count every penny since my husband died. $77,000. Money that could have fixed my leaking roof, replaced the refrigerator that broke last winter, bought the medications I'd been cutting in half to make them last. Instead, I'd been living on kindness and prayer. My hands trembled as I reached for my old accounting ledger, the same one I'd used for 20 years as treasurer of the church women's committee. I flipped through the pages, reading each entry I'd written in my careful handwriting. February, $15 for Mrs. Chen for hemming her curtains. March, $12 for medicine, $8 for fabric scraps. April, $20 from the church benevolence fund, $15 from Mrs. Chen next door for hemming her curtains. Not a single mention of any money from Alex. Not one transfer. Not one envelope. Nothing. I wasn't confused. I wasn't forgetful. I was being robbed. That night, I pulled out my small notebook, the one where I kept prayers and shopping lists, and wrote 3 words at the top of a fresh page. Find the truth. And beneath it, don't trust fake tears. I closed the notebook and sat in the darkness of my living room, listening to the tick of the old wall clock my husband had hung 40 years ago. My heart ached, not with anger yet, but with something deeper: betrayal, disappointment, and a growing resolve. I'd survived my husband's death. I'd survived loneliness, poverty, and the slow erosion of dignity that comes with aging in a world that forgets its elders. I would survive this too. And Kayla, beautiful, charming, lying Kayla, had made one fatal mistake. She'd underestimated a mother's memory, a mother's strength, and a mother's love for her son. The war had begun, but unlike Kayla, I wouldn't fight with lies. I would fight with truth. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in the darkness of my bedroom, staring at the water-stained ceiling, replaying every word, every gesture, every cold flicker in Kayla's eyes when she'd smiled and called me sweetheart. The way she'd touched Alex's arm, the way she'd dismissed me with such casual cruelty. Memory isn't what it used to be. At 3 a.m, I got up, turned on the dim kitchen light, and pulled out my ledger again. My fingers traced each line, each entry written in my careful handwriting. February, $15 from Mrs. Chen for hemming her curtains. March, $12 for medicine, $8 for fabric scraps. April, $20 from the church benevolence fund, $15 from Mrs. Chen next door for hemming her curtains. Not a single mention of any money from Alex. Not one transfer, not one cash. Nothing. I wasn't confused. I wasn't forgetful. I was being depraved. The next morning, I dressed in my best church dress, the navy one I'd owned for 12 years, and walked the 6 blocks to First Community Bank. My hands shook as I approached the counter where a kind young teller named Sarah worked. "Mrs. Arnold," she smiled warmly, "how can I help you today?" I cleared my throat, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to check if there have been any transfers to my account from my son, Alex Arnold. He says he's been sending me $7,000 every month for nearly a year." Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard. Then she paused, frowned, checked again. "Mrs. Arnold, I'm so sorry, but there's nothing here. The only activity on your account in the past year was a $4 interest payment last March." The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the counter's edge, the room tilting slightly. "Nothing?" I whispered. "You're absolutely certain?" "I've checked twice. There are no incoming transfers at all." I thanked her and walked out into the bright Tennessee morning, feeling like I was moving through water. $77,000. Gone. Stolen. And my son had no idea. Back home, I pulled out a fresh notebook, one with a plain blue cover, and wrote at the top, "Evidence." Underneath, I began documenting everything: dates, conversations, what Alex had said, what Kayla had claimed, the bank's confirmation. On Sunday after service, I approached Mr. Lawson, a retired bank manager who'd been attending our church for 30 years. We sat on a bench in the garden outside, surrounded by blooming dogwoods. "Mr. Lawson," I said quietly, "I need advice. Something feels very wrong." I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, his weathered face growing more serious with each word. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment. Then he leaned forward, his voice low and firm. "Maureen, if something feels wrong, it probably is. My advice? Keep notes. Document everything. Every conversation, every visit, every detail you can remember. And watch carefully. Thieves get comfortable. They make mistakes." I nodded, feeling a small flame of resolve ignite in my chest. That week, I watched, really watched. When Kayla came by Thursday, supposedly to check on me, I noticed things I'd been too hurt to see before. The new Hermes handbag dangling from her wrist, the diamond tennis bracelet that caught the light, the designer sunglasses perched on her head, each piece worth more than I spent in 6 months. She barely stayed 10 minutes, breezing through with fake concern and empty promises to bring Alex by soon. As she walked to her car, I stood at my window and watched. A delivery truck pulled up. The driver handed Kayla a large box. Nordstrom, the label said. She signed for it, glanced around nervously, then quickly loaded it into her trunk. Another purchase, another luxury, another piece of my son's money that was supposed to be saving my mother's life. I wrote it all down. Date, time, description, evidence. The war wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was building, one careful note at a time. And I was no longer afraid. 3 days later, Mr. Lawson called me from a number I didn't recognize. "Maureen, can you meet me at the church? Today? It's important." My heart hammered as I walked the familiar path to St. Matthew's. I found him in the small office behind the sanctuary, a manila folder spread across the desk, his face grave. "I made some calls," he said quietly, gesturing for me to sit. "Called in a few favors from my banking days. Maureen, what I found..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "It's worse than we thought." He slid a document across the desk. "There's an account at Regional Trust Bank, in your name." I stared at the paper, my hands trembling. "I've never opened an account there. Never." "I know." His finger traced down to the signature line. "Look at this." It was supposed to be my signature, But the loops were wrong, the slant too steep. Someone had tried to copy my handwriting and failed. "It's forged," I whispered, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. Mr. Lawson nodded grimly. "Every month, $7,000 is deposited into this account, and every month it's withdrawn, sometimes the same day." He pulled out more papers, and each one felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. Luxury Day Spa, downtown Nashville, $1,800. Elite Cosmetic Clinic, $4,000 for non-surgical procedures. 2 round-trip tickets to Cabo San Lucas, $5,600. Tiffany & Company, $7,200. The list went on and on, each charge a piece of my survival, stolen and spent on vanity and pleasure while I'd been cutting pills in half and eating donated soup. My vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. This wasn't just theft. It was cruelty. It was calculated, deliberate betrayal of the worst kind. "She's been living like a queen on money meant to keep you alive," Mr. Lawson said, his voice thick with anger. "And your son has no idea." That thought broke something inside me. Alex, my beautiful, hard-working boy, thought he was taking care of his mother. He'd been sending money faithfully, sacrificing part of his income to ensure I was comfortable, safe, provided for. And all this time, Kayla had been intercepting it, forging documents, spending it on herself while I was starving. She'd let him believe he was a good son while she turned me into a lie. I pressed my mouth to my hand, fighting back a sob. How could she do this? How could she look at him every day knowing? Because people like her don't feel guilt. They feel entitled, Mr. Lawson said quietly. I wiped my eyes and straightened my shoulders. A cold clarity settled over me. I began laying out the documents in chronological order, matching dates, building a timeline. January, deposit, withdrawal, spa charge. February, deposit, withdrawal, jewelry purchase. March, deposit, withdrawal, cosmetic procedure. Month after month, theft after theft, lie after lie. "Mr. Lawson," I said, my voice steady now, "what is this legally?" He looked at me with sad and knowing eyes. "This is elder financial exploitation, Marine. In Tennessee, it's a serious felony. With this much evidence, Kayla could face years in prison." I nodded slowly, my mind working. Not revenge, justice. There's a difference. I gathered every document, every receipt, every forged signature into the folder. I need to choose the right moment, when the truth will hurt her the most. Mr. Lawson studied me for a long moment, then nodded with something like respect in his eyes. "You're stronger than she ever imagined." I walked home that afternoon with the folder tucked under my arm like a loaded weapon. The spring air smelled sweet, birds sang in the dogwood trees, and somewhere in Nashville, Kayla was probably spending more of my money. But her time was running out, and she had no idea the storm that was coming. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea and my old address book, its pages yellowed with age. My finger stopped on a name I hadn't called in years, Linda Morrison. We'd worked together at the county clerk's office decades ago, when our children were small and our dreams were simple. She'd gone on to law school, become an advocate for seniors through the Legal Aid Society. I dialed her number with shaking hands. "Maureen Arnold, it's been too long. What's wrong, honey?" I told her everything. The missing money, the forged account, the luxury purchases. My voice cracked only once when I described cutting my pills in half while Kayla bought diamond bracelets with money meant to keep me alive. Linda was silent for a long moment after I finished. Then her voice came back, hard as steel. Maureen, this is serious. This isn't just theft. It's elder financial exploitation. In Tennessee, with amounts this large and forged documents, Kayla is looking at a Class C felony. She could face 3 to 15 years in prison. Prison. The word hung in the air like thunder before lightning. I need to see everything you have, Linda, continued. Every document, every photo, every note you can remember. Can you come to my office tomorrow? The next morning, Linda and I sat in her small legal aid office surrounded by papers. She examined each document with the careful attention of a surgeon, making notes, arranging everything into a clear, devastating timeline. Bank statements showing the fraudulent account, forged signatures. We'll need a handwriting expert to testify, but even I can see these are fakes. Photos of Kayla's purchases with timestamps. Your personal ledger showing no income from Alex. Your notebook documenting her lies. She looked up at me, her eyes fierce. This is airtight, Maureen. When you're ready to act, this will destroy her. We created 2 complete files, one for me, one for Linda to keep secure. Every receipt, every forged signature, every luxury charge while I'd been starving. The evidence was undeniable, unrefutable, damning. Back home, I slid my copy of the file into a large envelope and hid it under my bed, tucked between the mattress and box spring where no one would think to look. Then I went about my life as if nothing had changed. When Kayla stopped by later that week, unannounced, as always, I smiled and offered her tea. She declined, of course, wrinkling her nose at my humble kitchen as if poverty might be contagious. But I noticed everything now. The new sapphire ring on her finger, glinting in the afternoon light. The Chanel bag, a different one than last week, casually slung over her shoulder. The subtle glow of her skin that came from expensive facials and treatments. She was wearing my survival on her body like trophies. "Just checking on you, Mother Maureen," she said with that sugar-sweet voice that now made my stomach turn, "making sure you're doing all right." "I'm fine, dear," I replied, my smile never wavering. "Just fine." She left after 10 minutes, satisfied that the poor, confused old woman suspected nothing. Alex called that evening, apologizing for being so busy with a new tech acquisition. His voice sounded exhausted, stretched thin by work and responsibilities. He had no idea his wife was draining his accounts while playing the devoted daughter-in-law. "Mom, I'm sorry I haven't visited more," he said, "but I'm making sure you're taken care of. That's what matters, right?" My heart ached. "Yes, son, that's what matters." After we hung up, I sat at my table and made a decision. My real birthday, the one that counted, was in 3 weeks. I would invite them both to dinner. A simple celebration. Intimate. Quiet. The perfect stage for truth to finally walk into the light. That night, I lit a single white candle on my kitchen table and bowed my head. My prayer wasn't for revenge. Revenge was poison that destroyed the vessel that carried it. Instead, I prayed for strength, for clarity, for the courage to expose the darkness without becoming dark myself. "Let justice be done," I whispered into the flickering light. The candle flame danced, casting shadows on the walls. The storm was 3 weeks away, and I was ready. The evening of my real birthday arrived clear and cool, the kind of perfect spring night that makes you believe in new beginnings. I'd spent the afternoon preparing. Pot roast with carrots and potatoes, fresh cornbread cooling on the counter. The house smelled like home, like family, like all the dinners I'd cooked for Alex when he was a boy, like love that was about to be tested by fire. Alex arrived first, alone, carrying a small gift bag and wearing a smile that made my heart ache. "Mom, The house smells amazing." He kissed my cheek, and I held him a moment longer than usual, memorizing the feel of my son in my arms before everything changed. Kayla swept in 15 minutes later, perfume announcing her arrival before she rounded the corner. She wore a cream silk blouse and tailored pants that probably cost more than my monthly church donations, her hair styled in perfect waves, jewelry glittering at her throat and wrists. "Happy birthday, Mother Maureen," she said, her smile brilliant and hollow. We sat at my small dining table, the same table where I had helped Alex with homework, where my husband had carved Thanksgiving turkeys, where 3 generations of my family had shared meals and stories. Now it would host something else entirely. Dinner conversation flowed easily at first. Alex talked about his company's expansion, his latest tech acquisition, his plans for the next quarter. Kayla smiled and touched his arm possessively, playing the role of devoted wife with practiced ease. I served dessert, apple pie with a single candle, and Alex sang Happy Birthday, while Kayla joined in, her voice sweet as poisoned honey. Then, as I poured coffee, I spoke. My voice was casual, almost innocent. "Kayla, darling, I've been meaning to ask, on what date did you say you bring me the money each month? I want to make sure I'm keeping my record straight." The question hung in the air, like a blade suspended by thread. Kayla didn't miss a beat, her confidence absolute. "The first, of course, like clockwork, right when it arrives in my account." She smiled at me, then at Alex, completely certain of her lie. Alex's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. His brow furrowed slightly. "The first?" he said slowly, his voice confused. "No, honey, I set the auto transfer for the 8th. It's always been the 8th. That's when my quarterly dividends clear." The silence that followed was absolute. No one breathed, no one moved. Even the old wall clock seemed to stop ticking. Kayla's smile froze on her face, her eyes widening just a fraction. I watched the exact moment she realized what she had done. Watched understanding and panic flash across her features like lightning before a storm. I mean, the 8th, she stammered, her voice losing its smooth confidence. "I just got confused, darling." But it was too late. The lie had cracked open, and we'd all seen what was underneath. Alex looked from Kayla to me, then back to Kayla, his expression shifting from confusion to something darker. "You said the first. Why would you say the first if you bring it on the 8th? "I just got confused, darling," Kayla said quickly, reaching for his hand. Her voice was still sweet, but now I could hear the desperation underneath, like rot beneath fresh paint. "You know how scattered I get with dates." "You've never been scattered with dates," Alex said quietly. His jaw tightened. "You remember everyone's birthday, every anniversary, every—" A sharp knock on the door cut through the tension like a gunshot. All 3 of us turned toward the sound. I stood slowly, smoothing my dress with hands that were perfectly steady now. That must be Mr. Lawson from church. I invited him to stop by for coffee. I walked to the door and opened it. Mr. Lawson stood on my small porch, dressed in a neat suit, a thick manila folder tucked under his arm. His face was grave, his eyes kind but resolute. "Good evening, Maureen." "Alex." He nodded politely. Then his gaze landed on Kayla. "Mrs. Arnold." Kayla's face had drained of all color. Her hand gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white, and I saw her throat work as she swallowed hard. She knew. Somehow, in that instant, she knew exactly what was in that folder, and she knew her perfect, glittering world was about to shatter into 1,000 irreparable pieces. Mr. Lawson stepped inside, and I gestured to the empty chair at the table. He sat down slowly, placing the manila folder in front of him like a judge laying down a verdict. "Alex," he began, his voice gentle but firm, "your mother asked me to look into some financial irregularities. What I found is troubling. He opened the folder and one by one he laid the documents across my dining table. Each paper a piece of evidence, each piece a nail in Kayla's coffin. This is an account at Regional Trust Bank, opened in your mother's name. He slid the first document toward Alex. But Maureen never opened this account. Look at the signature. Alex picked up the paper, his eyes scanning the forged signature line. I watched his face as understanding dawned. The loops were wrong, the slant too forced. His jaw clenched. Every month, $7,000 is deposited here, he continued, placing another document down. And every month, it's withdrawn, sometimes the same day. More papers, bank statements showing transaction after transaction, withdrawal after withdrawal. Luxury day spa, $1,800. Elite cosmetic clinic, $4,000 for procedures. Round-trip flights to Cabo San Lucas, $5,600. Tiffany & Co., $7,200. Each revelation landed like a blow. Alex's face went from confused to horrified to devastated, his hands trembling as he picked up receipt after receipt. And this, Mr. Lawson said quietly, sliding across a grainy photograph, is bank camera footage from Regional Trust. That's Kayla making a withdrawal on March 8th. The room spun into chaos. This is ridiculous. Kayla's voice cracked through the silence like breaking glass. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This is absurd. She's an old woman. Her memory is failing. She doesn't know what she's saying. She pointed at me, her perfectly manicured finger shaking. She probably opened that account herself and forgot. She's confused, senile. You can't trust anything Kayla. Alex cut through her tirade, low and dangerous. Stop talking. He held up the bank photo, his hand shaking with barely contained rage. This is you. That's your face. That's the coat I bought you for Christmas. It's a misunderstanding, Kayla said desperately, her voice rising. I can explain. It's not what it looks like. Then explain the forged signature, Mr. Lawson said calmly. Explain why you opened an account in Maureen's name without her knowledge. Explain why you've been stealing $77,000 while she's been living on church donations. Kayla's composure shattered completely. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, the stress. Do you know what it's like being married to a workaholic? Always alone, always ignored, always... Her voice turned venomous, spinning toward Alex. This is your fault. If you paid attention to me, if you came home before midnight, if you actually cared about your wife instead of just your precious company. So you stole from my mother? Alex stood, his voice shaking with fury and heartbreak. You let her starve while you got spa treatments? While she cut her medication in half, you bought diamond bracelets? She wasn't starving, don't be so dramatic, Kayla shot back, but her voice cracked on the words. Alex took a step toward her, and I saw something I'd never seen in my son's face. Cold, absolute fury. Where is my mother's money, Kayla?
I don't have it. It's spent. It's gone. She was screaming now, mascara running down her cheeks. And I'm not going to stand here and be attacked like this. She grabbed her Chanel bag, bought with stolen money, and stormed toward the door. You'll hear from my lawyer. The door slammed so hard the windows rattled. The silence that followed was deafening. Alex stood frozen in the middle of my small dining room, surrounded by evidence of his wife's betrayal, his face pale as death. Slowly, he turned to look at me, and I saw tears streaming down his cheeks. Mom, he whispered, his voice breaking. Mom, I'm so sorry. He collapsed into the chair, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking with sobs. I thought I was taking care of you. I thought, God, Mom, you've been starving. You've been suffering. And I had no idea. I moved to him, placing my hand on his shoulder, feeling him tremble beneath my touch. I know, sweetheart. I know. My son, my millionaire, successful, brilliant son, wept like the little boy who used to crawl into my lap after nightmares. And my heart broke for him, even as justice finally began to dawn. 6 weeks later, I sat in the Davidson County Courthouse, my hands folded in my lap, wearing the same navy dress I'd worn to meet Winda that first time. The courtroom smelled like old wood and nervous energy, its high ceilings making every whisper echo. Linda sat beside me, her briefcase full of irrefutable evidence. Across the aisle, Kayla sat with her attorney, a slick man in an expensive suit who kept glancing at his watch as if this whole proceeding was beneath him. Alex sat in the gallery behind me, his presence a silent support. He'd aged years in 6 weeks, the weight of betrayal carving lines into his face. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Whitmore. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She settled into her seat and looked directly at me. Mrs. Arnold, you filed a civil case for elder financial exploitation against Kayla Arnold. Counselor Morrison, please present your evidence. Linda stood, and her voice rang clear and strong through the courtroom. Your Honor, the evidence will show that the defendant systematically defrauded Mrs. Maureen Arnold of $77,000 over 11 months through identity theft, forgery, and deliberate financial exploitation. She began laying out the case, piece by devastating piece. The forged account opened in my name. Bank statements showing monthly deposits and immediate withdrawals. The signatures that didn't match mine, confirmed by a handwriting expert who testified that the forgeries were crude and obvious. Then came the receipts, each one projected on a screen for the entire courtroom to see. Luxury spa treatments while I rationed medicine. Designer jewelry while I ate donated soup. International trips while I walked 3 miles to church to save bus fare. But the worst revelation came from Alex's business accountant, called to testify about irregularities in company expenses. Mrs. Kayla Arnold used the company credit card for personal expenses, totaling $43,000, the accountant stated, adjusting his glasses. These included cosmetic procedures at Elite Medical Spa, specifically Botox injections and laser treatments, neither of which were business-related. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Additionally, the accountant continued, glancing at Alex apologetically, there was a trip to Miami in January. 2 tickets. Hotel suite. Neither Mr. Arnold nor any company employee accompanied Mrs. Arnold on this trip. The implication hung heavy in the air. Kayla had taken another man on a luxury vacation using Alex's money while his mother went hungry. I heard Alex's sharp intake of breath behind me. Kayla's attorney stood, his voice smooth as oil. Your Honor, my client maintains that Mrs. Arnold's memory is compromised by age. The alleged victim has simply forgotten receiving the money. Objection, Linda said sharply. We have medical records from Mrs. Arnold's physician confirming she has no cognitive impairment. We have her meticulously kept ledger going back 12 years. We have bank records. We have camera footage. The defense's only strategy is to rely on cruel stereotypes about elderly women. Judge Whitmore's expression darkened. Sustained. Continue, Counselor Morrison. Linda presented my ledger. Every entry in my neat handwriting, every dollar accounted for. She showed photos time-stamped and geotagged of Kayla wearing luxury items purchased with stolen money. She played the bank camera footage of Kayla withdrawing cash, her face clear as day. The evidence was overwhelming, irrefutable, damning. When it was her turn, Kayla took the stand, her face carefully composed, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. Your Honor, I love my mother-in-law. This is all a terrible misunderstanding. She's elderly, confused. Sometimes she calls me by her late husband's name. I've been nothing but devoted. Mrs. Arnold, Judge Whitmore interrupted, her voice sharp as a blade. Did you or did you not open an account at Regional Trust Bank using your mother-in-law's name and forged signature? Kayla hesitated too long. I was trying to help organize her finances. Yes or no? It's complicated. Yes or no? Kayla's composure cracked. She's lying. She's a vindictive old woman who's jealous of me. She's always hated me, always. That's enough. Judge Whitmore's gavel cracked like thunder. I've heard enough. The judge leaned forward, her eyes cold with fury. Mrs. Kayla Arnold, this court finds clear and convincing evidence of elder financial exploitation. You are hereby ordered to repay Mrs. Maureen Arnold the full sum of $77,000 within 90 days. All access to Mr. Alex Arnold's finances is frozen pending further investigation. Additionally, I am referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. Kayla's face went white. You can't! This isn't—
Furthermore, the judge continued, you are to have no contact with Mrs. Arnold. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. The gavel fell with finality. Kayla screamed, an inhuman sound of rage and desperation that echoed through the courtroom. This is insane! She's ruining my life! You're all— Her attorney grabbed her arm, trying to quiet her, but she wrenched away and fled toward the exit, her heels clicking frantically against marble floors, her designer dress billowing behind her like a flag of defeat. The courtroom doors slammed shut. In the silence that followed, I sat perfectly still, my hands still folded in my lap. Justice, it turned out, was quieter than I'd imagined, but no less powerful. The storm came without warning on a Tuesday night in late summer, rain hammering against my windows like fists demanding entry. I was brewing chamomile tea in my small kitchen, the kitchen that now had a working refrigerator and fresh groceries, paid for with money finally returned to me, when I heard the knock. Not a polite knock, a desperate one. I opened the door to find my son, standing in the downpour, soaked to the bone, his expensive suit clinging to him like a second skin. Rain streamed down his face, mixing with tears I pretended not to see. "Mom," he choked out, and the word held 11 months of guilt, 6 weeks of shame, and a lifetime of love that had never once wavered despite everything. He collapsed into my arms right there in the doorway, this tall, successful man reduced to the little boy who used to wake from nightmares calling for me. His whole body shook with sobs that came from somewhere deep and broken inside him. "She's gone," he whispered against my shoulder. "She emptied everything and disappeared. My accounts, the business reserves, everything. I'm ruined, Mom. And I deserve it. I should have known. I should have protected you." I held him tighter, feeling his grief soak into my dress along with the rain. "Hush now," I murmured, the same words I'd spoken when he was small and afraid. "Come inside, baby. Come inside." I guided him to the kitchen table, the same table where truth had finally been spoken, and wrapped him in my old quilt, the one I'd sewn when he was born. His hands trembled around the cup of tea I placed before him, steam rising between us like prayers made visible. "I failed you," he said, his voice raw and shattered. "I let you starve while You didn't know," I interrupted gently, covering his hand with mine. "You were lied to by someone you trusted. That's not your fault." "But I should have visited more, should have seen." "Alex," I waited until he met my eyes. "I forgive you." The words hung in the air between us, simple and complete. Not because I had to say them, not because forgiveness was expected or required, but because I chose healing over bitterness, love over resentment, my son's peace over my own wounded pride. For the first time in months, we both exhaled. And in that small kitchen, with rain drumming on the roof and tea growing cold between us, we began to breathe honestly again. The recovered $77,000 sat in my account for exactly 3 days before I knew what it was meant for. Not revenge, not comfort, but purpose. I called Linda Morrison first, then Mr. Lawson, then the pastor at St. Matthew's. Within a month, we'd formed the Elder Hands Support Program, a nonprofit dedicated to helping seniors identify and escape financial abuse before it destroyed them the way it had nearly destroyed me. Alex was there for the first meeting, sitting in a folding chair in the church basement, his hands clasped between his knees like a penitent. "Alex," he said quietly, "please, let me do something that matters." So he did. My millionaire son began volunteering 3 evenings a week, teaching seniors how to spot warning signs, how to protect their accounts, how to ask for help without shame. He spoke about his own blindness, his own failure to see, and people listened because his humility was genuine and hard-won. Our relationship transformed in those months, not back to what it was, that innocence was gone forever, but into something deeper, forged in the fire of betrayal and tempered by forgiveness. We had coffee every Sunday morning. He helped me with the program's finances. I taught him how to make my pot roast, the recipe he'd loved as a boy. We were healing together. 1 year later, I stood backstage at the Tennessee State Capitol, smoothing my new dress, navy blue still, but this one bought with my own money, when someone pinned a microphone to my collar. The humanitarian award ceremony was about to begin, and my hands trembled with nerves I hadn't felt since Alex was born. "You'll be wonderful, Mom," Alex whispered beside me, squeezing my hand. When they called my name, I walked across that stage with my head held high. No longer the starving woman rationing apple slices, no longer the silent victim cutting pills in half. The applause washed over me like absolution. I stood at the podium and looked out at hundreds of faces, lawmakers, advocates, survivors, and somewhere in the third row, my son, his eyes shining with pride. "My name is Maureen Arnold," I began, my voice steady and strong. "1 year ago, I was a victim of elder financial abuse. Today, I'm here to tell you that our stories don't end in the darkness of betrayal. They can begin there." I paused, letting the words settle like seeds. Because no matter how quiet a mother may seem, she is never, ever too old to rise. The award ceremony ended. I went home to my small house, the one with a full refrigerator now, heat that works, medicine I don't have to cut in half. But tonight, somewhere in America, an elderly woman is rationing apple slices for dinner. Someone she trusts is stealing from her, and nobody's checking. 1 in 10 seniors is being financially abused right now. Most never tell anyone. They're ashamed, afraid, invisible. Here's my question for you. When was the last time you actually checked on the elderly people in your life? Not a text, not a holiday card. Actually looked at their living situation, their finances, whether they're eating. Can't remember? Then there's a chance they're drowning and you don't even know. Do one thing today. Just one. Visit an elderly parent or relative. Ask real questions. Look at their bank statements if they'll let you. Notice who's suddenly helping with their money. Donate to elder abuse prevention organizations. Volunteer 1 hour at a senior center. Anything, but do it today. Because here's the truth you don't want to hear. If you do nothing and something happens, you'll have to live with that. You'll stand at their funeral and wonder if they were suffering, if they were hungry, if they died alone because nobody bothered to check. Don't let that be you. I was lucky. Someone noticed. Someone cared. Be that person for someone else. Today, right now. Maureen Arnold.